Hi, so today I'm going to talk about the cultural approach to organizations. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to cover the terms, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to also be applying those terms specifically to the organization that I work for, Mark First. I've been trying to record this video and I found that it's going to be too long of a video if I don't apply it all at once. This way I know I'm also making sure that I'm hitting every single point that I want to. Anyways, let's jump right in. So the organizational culture approach has to do with focusing on the actions, ways of thinking, practices, and stories, and the artifacts that characterize a particular organization. So an organization is a culture. It does not have a culture. It is a culture. And it's very specific to each individual organization. The best way I can explain it, the best way I can compare it, would be to think of an organization as a little teeny tiny mini country. I also apologize, my dog is in her crate right below my table, so you might hear some shifting around, but that's just my dog. So just imagine every organization as being its own little country, and it's specific to that organization and the culture that is developed through the leader of that organization, or the supervisor, or the manager, or whoever is in charge. Each organizational culture has different cultural elements that make up that organization. I'm going to focus more on certain elements because they apply more to the theory in of itself, but I'll cover each one, some of them a little more quickly than the rest, like metaphors. So metaphors are, as we know, figures of speech that define an unfamiliar experience in terms of another more familiar one. And so these are used in organizations as a way, could be used as a way to like train people, or just things that are used to explain, what happens in the organization in comparison to outside the organization, things like that. I don't have any specific examples in terms of my specific organization in terms of applying it, but I've got a lot of examples for other things. So next one is rituals, and these are really, really important. So these dramatize a culture's basic values and can range in scope. They can be very personal, they can be day-to-day, it can be something that everyone does, it can be something that happens annually, something that happens biannually, things like that. Specifically to my organizations, we do lots of fundraisers, and those would be considered rituals. So those are things that we do on a consistent basis, we do it regularly. We just did a Chipotle fundraiser, and that's ritual, something that the idea of fundraisers is what is more of the ritual, is that we do that regularly because we're a nonprofit organization providing services for people with disabilities, so we have to do that regularly to produce funds. But it could also be something as simple as people coming in and like working on the shift and taking care of residents and just doing their day-to-day, everyday tasks. Next are stories. These are also important, so it conveys to members kind of like what is valued in the specific culture. And so these can be conveyed in a many manner of ways. So it could be, something that a coworker says in passing, and they say, "Oh, like so and so, like we don't like them," things like that. Or you're in training and a coworker says you're doing that wrong. So specifically to my organization, we have this whole like training process that we go through, and there's a blue book. It's called the Blue Book, and it trains you to be a direct support professional. While you're doing that, you have a trainer who is there with you telling you what to do. So in that way, they are telling you, what's expected of you, here's how you can be a great employee, this is what you need to do. And in addition, you're meeting that person, you're getting socialized, which is an important part of the cultural approach, is that socialization of new employees. And we'll touch more on that in one of the research articles I chose. But they're telling you about the organization inadvertently. They're telling you about the people, they're telling you about the supervisors, they're telling you about the individuals that you support. And so you're learning kind of incidentally, what's important in this organization, why does it matter, what should I be doing to fit in around here. Next are artifacts. Artifacts is anything tangible, physical, things that you can see in an organization. So, for example, at Mark First, when we're in the residential setting, we are allowed to wear whatever we would like. You can wear sweatpants, you can wear a dress shirt, you can wear tucked in, you can wear sandals, you can wear tennis shoes. Doesn't matter. They want to create an environment that feels really homey, and it's not we don't want our residents to feel like they're in a nursing home. They're not, and so we want it to feel like an environment that is, friendly and inviting and warm. And that's a part of the culture of the organization. They want it to be very much so that they are living their most independent, fulfilling life. And so that's an artifact because you can see it, and that's apparent to someone on the outside. However, what's important with artifacts is the importance that is in place on it from employees and why that is significant. So to an outsider looking at me as an employee at Mark First wearing what I want, they may not realize that that's like we're doing that purposefully. We are doing it to create an environment that is positive for our residents. They just see, oh, they're really casual at Mark First, So it's really all about what is important to the employees and why it's being done that way. Next are heroes, and these can be heroes and heroines. My apologies. These can be a number of members in the organization. These are the people that go above and beyond. They are, highly renowned, and everyone really looks up to them. They're the role models of the organization. And that can be someone way at the bottom who is just a staff member who's just getting minimum wage, but they go above and beyond what they need to do, and they do a really good job of it. Or this can be the CEO, and she does a great job, and she really cares about the company and the employees and the individuals. And I think that's very true of Mark First. There are a lot of people. It's hard to specifically apply this one just because, so our CEO, Laura, I would definitely say that she's a heroine. She makes a point to come out to all the houses and really meet with the residents and get to know them very, very well. And I think it's very admirable because I don't think there are many CEOs or higher-ups or executives or whoever would make the time for something as simple as that. But she comes out regularly, at least once a month. I see her, and I've met her, and she's wonderful. Definitely a heroine. Performances center on rituals, passion, sociality, politics, and socialization of new members. And these, it kind of goes back to rituals. It's all kind of integrated in that I see it as kind of like the day-to-day kind of things, what's happening, the gossip that's happening in the organization. So like, for example, today we just had our monthly meeting, and my supervisor standing up in front of all of us and telling us, these are the things we need to work on, these are what we're doing great, this is what we can do better. That's performance, and it's part of the politics. We're talking about the issues, we're trying to improve upon it, things of that nature. Finally, we have the values, and this includes, so there's two parts to values looked like four. There's two. There are two parts to values in an organization. There are the espoused values, and these are the values like the mission statement of an organization or their principles, what they are trying to accomplish with their organization. Specifically for Mark First, the espoused values are essentially helping individuals live their best life and most independent life to the fullest extent possible. But the values in practice are focused more on what actually happens, what actually gets done, what's actually accomplished, what are you actually, giving to society, what is your organization accomplishing in practice. And that can sometimes be kind of difficult to discern, especially as an outsider or as a new employee. When you're really in the organization, you can tell, okay, this is what's actually happening. And I think that Mark First does hold very close values in practice to their espoused values. I don't see every level of the organization. I only see the residential portion, and I can say that from personal experience, we definitely do live up to those espoused values. I'm going to be going back, once we get deeper into the video, I'm going to be going back and forth between my notebook and my the research articles that I found. So there are three levels to an organization, kind of like the onion metaphor like we've talked about in previous theories. So there's an outside layer, there is a middle layer, and there is an inside layer. So to begin with, the outside layer are the artifacts. So it tells you something about the organizational culture. You may not be able to know exactly what it is or just fully discern the purpose behind it. And that's what I was talking about earlier, is that what really matters is the importance that's placed on it by the employees that work there. Excuse me. So again, the artifacts are things on the outside. So like I can go up to any organization and say, oh, I see that they wear this to work. And that's an artifact, but I may not realize why it's important. And like I said earlier, we wear very casual dress. We are in a home environment, so there's furniture and it's very homey, and there's not a whole lot of medical equipment around. It's very, very, it's intended to be very homey and welcoming. And that's a part of the culture, and it's a part of the beliefs of the organization. And then we move into the middle layer, and these are the values, both espoused and the values in practice. These are a little bit harder, more difficult to discern than the artifacts because they're not always super clear. So espoused values, as we've said, are what the organization claims they value, and the values in practice are what the organization actually values, what is actually happening day to day, what is actually being carried out. And I talked about Mark First and their values, and I do think that they do live up to them as much as possible. Finally is the inside layer of an organization, and this has to do with the basic assumptions, and this is the heart and soul of organizational culture. It's unconscious, it's extremely difficult to discern and to pinpoint, often taken for granted. They are beliefs, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. This is the ultimate source of values and actions. So this is what, I mean, it goes back to like that values and practice, that this is what's really happening every day. This is what they're really accomplishing. And that can be made, and that's, I mean, that is the culture. I mean, it's all so interrelated. And this is why I like the theory so much. That's why I like this approach so much. I mean, I want to work for an organization, a nonprofit organization. I think that having a thorough understanding of how culture is built and what goes into that culture is really, really important to build a positive environment. So like I said, it's really, really difficult to determine these. I don't even think I have a full grasp of Mark First's basic assumptions, but essentially, it would come down to what the leader is doing and how they are influencing their employees, is how I understand it. So how are the higher-ups influencing the people below them in order to follow through on what they want to accomplish? And that's the inside layers, how everything is interrelated, how everybody works together, how it all comes together to meet those values. So I kind of touched on this just a second ago, of why this is so important. So as we discussed, a lot of the development of a culture within an organization comes down to the leader. As we've learned from Shine, the only thing of real importance, this is what he states, the only thing of real importance that a leader does is create and manage culture. So we know from this approach that a leader's job, a leader's duty, is to create this culture that is aligned with the beliefs of the organization. And that's why this approach is so important, because the culture directly influences the beliefs, the values, the actions of an organization. So if you have conflicting culture and that conflicts with the values of the organization, you're not going to meet those values. You're not going to meet those basic principles of what you want to accomplish. So in terms of Mark First, we want to help our residents meet their most fulfilling, most independent life possible. And if we are consistently restraining our individuals, or we are telling them that they can't do something, or we're putting them down, or that's the culture that's developed from our leader, that we need to be very authoritative over our residents, then we're not going to help our residents meet their full potential or live independent lives. And that's, I think, the importance of the cultural approach, because it influences directly to the beliefs of that organization. This video is getting very long. but I'm going to quickly go through my research articles. So I was really, really interested of each of the specific individuals who work within an organization and how they affect that culture. So, sorry, I am scrolling to my first one. So this first one is by, I'm going to be really terrible and not know how to pronounce her last name. It's Men and Zhang. And so it's called Cultivating Quality Employee-Organization Relationships, the Interplay Among Organizational Leadership, Culture, and Communication. So this article places a huge emphasis on leadership within an organization, which, as we know from the theory, is very, very important. And it has a large impact between employees and leaders. Specifically, the study was looking how leadership, symmetrical internal communication, and organizational culture affect employee organizational relationships, or EORs. And I'm going to reference that concept as EORs for the rest of this discussion. So from the theory, and let me also touch on symmetrical communication, because I had no idea what that was. So it's been defined as communication. This is directly from the article, by the way. Communication worldview in the context of internal communication characterized by the focus on trust, credibility, openness, relationships, reciprocity, network symmetry, horizontal communication, feedback. Basically, it's a very, I would say, very progressive kind of model. It's very focused on like working with one another. I'm going to reference one of the other theories. It's very similar to Theory Y and Z, very focused on the employees and really incorporating good connections between leaders and their employees. But it was found that authentic leadership was a massive predictor of symmetrical communication within organizations, and the culture present within the 391 total organizations analyzed also had a positive impact on EOR. So it was found that incorporating this system of symmetrical communication within the organizations was extremely impactful in enhancing EOR's employee-organization relationships. So it improved the culture of the organization, and that was implemented through the leader. So you can clearly see that leadership is highly important in developing a strong culture. So this next one, again, I really cannot pronounce their last name, by Popsekue Youngholm. I'm not sure. It's in my works cited. It's called Organizational Social Capital and Performance Management, Linguistic and Philosophical Investigations. So this article mainly discusses the socialization of new employees within an organization, and it's not so much as a research. I mean, it is a research article. They're definitely focused on understanding this aspect of new employees, but it's not. It gathers the research of others and kind of compiles it into an article for us. Really interesting. I'm not talking about the whole article. There was a section that I just kind of focused on, but the whole thing is really, really good. I'm going to read a section and kind of dissect it a little bit for you. So this is handling the advancement of work connections by newcomers and fellow workers is a tough process because beginning newcomers cannot grasp the structural, relational, or cognitive features of the group. So this is the culture of the organization. They can't grasp all of that because they're so new. They're not integrated. They aren't hearing those stories. They aren't hearing, they aren't familiar with the rituals or the artifacts or who's important. So they're kind of figuring it all out. They're developing those relationships. So it's the duty of the newcomer to grasp how to harmonize, but it's also key for the other individuals in the work group to appreciate wholeheartedly and help the newcomer as a component of the group. That was Court and Lynn, 2013. So basically this is talking about newcomers and how they get incorporated into the culture of the organization. And it really is the duty of the other employees to ensure that they are being integrated and welcomed into that community and they are being educated on that culture. Finally, we have, I can actually pronounce these last names, Walker and Ortiz from 2015, Women Doing Leadership, Leadership Styles and Organizational Culture. This comes from the International Journal of Business Communication. This was super, super interesting to me. So I was really curious about women leadership. The company I work for has a female CEO, and I think she does a beautiful job. But this specific research article was focused on whether or not males or females develop as leaders within a group setting, who develops, and they really were very specific on the language that was used, how many words were used per turn, how many words were used total, how many turns each person took. It was very in-depth, very interesting. So they basically these are all MBA students, and they put them all into groups. They were tasked with placing importance of this. So basically, they were in a simulation of a plane crash. So they crashed, and they had to determine, okay, these are the things from the plane that we need to keep because these are the most important for our survival. And they kind of give them some mock scenarios, and they had to kind of work through them as a team. So it was men and women, both in an MBA program. They all had 10 years of work experience. They analyzed the language, and it was found that even when women emerged as leaders within groups, they were not identified as that leader from their group. So no one in the group said, yes, that woman is the leader. They always said that the men were the leader of the group. And I thought the reason why I bring this up is because the importance of the biggest takeaway I think from this is that leaders develop this culture. And in this, women are not being identified as leaders. So I think it's very telling of the organizations that are, of how leadership develops. It's a very masculine culture. And the article really dives into what makes up feminine management, what makes up masculine management. And it's, like I said, very telling that women weren't identified. And it shows that the organizations that are out there right now are very masculine. They're very male-dominated. However, it did mention at the end of the article that it is likely that over the next few years that organizations will become more feminine in their culture, meaning that having an understanding of feminine styles is important so that we can develop cultures that are responsive to that and that we can be prepared to transition to that. I really, really love this approach, so much so that I wrote my reflection paper on it, and I think that it is a highly applicable, highly useful approach to organizations that I do plan on using in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.